Hi everybody, I'm KHOU 11 meteorologist Pat Kaplan here with an update on the tropics. Obviously we have some big thunderstorms happening outside right now, but we really want to focus this live stream on what's happening in the tropics because we've got the brand new update from the National Hurricane Center that is focused on Hurricane Erin, but also on not one but now two other spots in the tropical Atlantic that we are going to be keeping an eye on as we go through the next 7 to 10 days. So let's talk about what we've got on the map right now. There's Hurricane Erin on the left side of the board here, just to the north of the Turks and Caicos. The orange area here through the middle of the Atlantic, and I know it's kind of hard to see it just with the screen, within the screen, but that's the other tropical wave that we're watching. Right now it's in the middle of the Atlantic, and it's got a 60% chance of development within the next 7 days. But that development is not expected to happen until it reaches this orange shaded area here from the Western Atlantic into the Caribbean. And then finally, another tropical wave emerging off the west coast of Africa right now only has a low 10% chance of development within the next 2 to 7 days. Not something to turn our back on right now, but certainly not going to be the top priority for us here in this live stream. So we will start with our named system first, Hurricane Erin. As of the 7 p.m. advisory, winds sustained at 130 miles per hour. This is still a strong Category 4 hurricane moving to the northwest at about 10 miles per hour. Tropical storm warnings and watches up from the Turks and Caicos into the southern Bahamas. And the reason why, again, they're tropical storm watches and warnings and not hurricane watches and warnings just has to do with where the worst impacts of Erin will go. They're going to go away from the island chain, so we don't see hurricane force winds as a concern for these islands, more so just tropical storm force winds. So again, that's why it's tropical storm watches and warnings. Over the next 2 days, Erin continues to very slowly make that north and eventually northeastward turn away from the United States, still maintaining some pretty healthy strength though. Category 3 status all the way up towards the point where it makes that turn away from North Carolina. However, by this point, the storm will start to expand in size, so much so that they've got tropical storm watches posted for the outer banks of North Carolina. Again, even though the storm is not going to make landfall and will be weakening as it takes that hard turn towards the right, we could see tropical storm impacts for coastal portions of North Carolina as we get to Wednesday and Thursday. So here's the latest buoy observations. We've got a lot of buoys out in this part of the world, and these are great because they give us an idea of the environment around the storm and also what the storm is doing to the ocean. Notice this buoy here just to the east of the center, 40 mile per hour winds, but 23-foot seas, water temperatures comfortably above 80 degrees. This buoy here north of the storm, 36 mile per hour winds, 22-foot waves, and 86-degree water temperatures. So the water in this part of the world certainly warm enough to keep this storm sustained over the next few days. Let's talk about wave heights as we go through the next few days here. We could see 5 to 10-foot waves from the North Florida coast through the Georgia coastline and the Carolinas as we get towards Wednesday. By Thursday, though, these wave heights get incredibly high along the outer banks of the Carolinas. Hatteras, all the way up towards the Virginia border, you could see 10 to 20-foot waves crashing on shore. Of course, the highest waves will be out towards the center of Hurricane Erin, but still, beach erosion a big concern for the beaches here in the Carolinas up through Virginia. And those big waves will even extend farther north into New England and the Northeast from places like Maryland, New Jersey, New York, all the way into New England. We could see wave heights around 10 to 15 feet as we get towards Thursday and Friday. Now, what is going to keep Erin from actually making landfall in the United States? It has to do with two large areas of high pressure. First, this sprawling one across the Atlantic, and the other, this area of high pressure that's over the center part of the United States. That's actually what's been responsible for bringing us all of this heat here in southeast Texas the last few days. There's a little bit of a weakness in between these two highs, and that will allow Erin to kind of split in between and eventually slip out to sea. as we get towards the end of the week and the weekend. Definitely a close call for the East Coast, but that area of high pressure is strong enough that it will keep Erin just offshore as we get towards Thursday and Friday. Now, behind Erin, again, we've got two areas that we're watching out here in the Atlantic. This is the one that I want to focus on, though. This one right here that is expected to potentially develop in that orange shaded area towards the end of the week. So we're not expecting development here in the next 2 to 3 days. But down the line, as this system, this wave starts to get closer towards the Antilles in the Western Atlantic and the Caribbean, that's where conditions could become more favorable for potential development. So we put future track into motion here. What we're looking at is areas of spin or vorticity. And you've got all these yellow and orange kind of ribbons of spin through the ocean. I know it's kind of a weird term, right? Ribbons of spin, but that's what we look for here. Now, basically, when those areas of spin start to consolidate into a more solid area, that's where tropical development becomes a little more likely. And you can see we've got that ball of red, that consolidated area of spin that could start to develop as we get into the weekend and next week. On this particular model run, this actually takes a similar path to Erin, but I have seen other model runs that take that area maybe a little farther to the west. So we really have to keep a close eye on this system as we get into the weekend. There are no definites right now on what may happen with it. It's just the time of the year when anything that starts to spin up out in the Atlantic, we've got to keep a very close eye on, especially as it moves towards the United States. But that's not the only area. So this is what we just talked about here. That's going to move towards the Antilles as we get into the weekend. But then we've got another area that follows in behind it, and then potentially another one behind that as we get into the end of next week. So looking 10 days down the road. And this is just the time of the year. We call it the Cape Verde season, right? So here are the Cape Verde Islands off the west coast of Africa. And we call it the Cape Verde season because typically this time of year, waves start to move off the west coast of Africa and could potentially develop into tropical systems. And so this is the season when we're watching every cluster of thunderstorms that moves off the west coast of Africa. I'm not overly impressed with the two that come in behind this next one after Erin. But again, anything this time of year bears watching, especially as we start to get into the peak of hurricane season. So we are right now in the middle of August. I forgot to change this, August 18th. Forgive me. But we're getting closer to the peak of hurricane season, which is September 10th. So typically that means that between now and let's say mid-October is the climatological or historical peak for hurricane season. Now, that's not to say that we don't see more storms some years front-loaded into the season through June, July, and August, or even backloaded seasons where we see more activity October and November. But just typically from now through mid-October is when we see the highest frequency of tropical storms and hurricanes. So a reminder that we're in the thick of the season right now. Stay on top of the forecast. We're doing these updates here every day on KHOU 11 Plus at 8 p.m. We're also updating things online, and of course we're on TV, so you can always get the latest information from us. And it's a good idea, a good practice to get into over the next 2 months to check back daily for any updates, especially if we see any bigger changes. That's all I've got for you right now. Stay on top of the forecast again. We'll have the latest coming up on the KHOU 11 News tonight at 10 o'clock, and we hope to see you then.